What is going on, everybody? My name is Tyler. Today we're going to be working on a 2010, what is this? 2010 CRV. It's got the big 2.4 liter. And today we're going to be talking evaporative emissions, otherwise known as Evap. Today I'm going to show you how to properly smoke test an evap system, since I've seen a lot of videos and people aren't doing this stuff right, man. Couple things that we're going to be using today. One, scan tool. Do you need a scan tool to do evap testing? Sometimes. Most of the time you don't need the scan tool. I'll show you when we get a little bit more in depth. I'm more so using the scan tool to use its bidirectional controls to activate things in the evap system. You can do these on the bench manually, testing it power and ground with a battery, but this makes our life a lot easier. Second thing I'm going to be using today, smoke tester. Everybody should have one of these, especially you shops out there. Again, is it going to make our life easier? Yes. Is it necessary? No. I'm sure you guys have all seen the Scotty Kilmer videos of him grabbing a cigar or something like that produces smoke and blowing it into a system. Works the same way. This luckily is a constant flow of smoke, and it's a lot easier doing it this way. But again, you don't absolutely need this tool. So let's talk about the evap system. What does it do? The evap system on your vehicle recycles the evap emissions, aka the hydrocarbons, the gas fumes in your gas tank. Instead of just venting it off to the atmosphere all the time like in the old days, they recycle those gas fumes back through the motor. On most, and I say most because there are exceptions, on most modern vehicles, these evap systems are very similar in nature. Most of these evap systems, you're going to find two valves. You're going to find your vent valve, so that's going to control the flow in and out of your charcoal canister at the back. And you have your purge valve. That's going to control the flow of those gas fumes from your tank back through the motor. If either of those two valves are not working, it's going to cause problems. It's going to turn on a check engine light, most likely. Could be drivability issues. There's a host of things that those valves not working could cause. So usually before I even do any testing on a vehicle, if it has any sort of evap code, I don't care what it is I'll go into my scan tool and I will activate those valves. And you should hear them click. On this particular vehicle, I've already diagnosed it. It has a bad purge valve. The purge valve is open electronically. It doesn't work. It doesn't do nothing. So we're here today to replace that purge valve. But after that purge valve goes in, we're not done. We got to make sure that the rest of the system on this vehicle is working properly. Otherwise, you're going to have a boomerang. The customers are going to go out and they don't care what the check engine light's on for. They just care that the check engine light is on. So if you fix one thing, and now the system can work properly and detect a leak or something in the back, or the vent valve's not working properly so it's leaking, then that check engine light comes back on. Anyways, let's get into it. Let me actually grab this purge valve and I'm going to show you what we're going to be doing here. So this purge valve is pretty much as far forward in this system as you can be. Most of them look like this. Two connections, one coming from your tank, one going to the motor. It's just a little 2-wire solenoid, power and ground, that's all that these things need. And this is usually duty cycled, meaning that the computer is controlling how much on and off time this thing is having. So if it's 10% on and 90% off, that's a 10% duty cycle. None of that really matters. All that matters is this valve opens and shuts properly. This is a normally closed valve. When activated, it's open. So right now, I should not be able to blow through this valve at all. Now, why I said that this is the most forward valve on this system is because we're going to be taking the port that goes back to the tank, and that's actually where we're going to smoke this in from. That's going to get the entire system, albeit there is a little bit going on in front of this, but the computer is not monitoring that. If this thing is working how it's supposed to, it's only monitoring everything from here back. Basically, all you got to do is go under the hood, find your purge valve, and the line that's going back to the tank from your purge valve, that's the line that you're hooking into. So let's get our smoke machine all hooked up here. This one uses the battery of the vehicle. and shop air. You can buy these, the cheaper ones, and they're all electric. They don't use shop air. Not the greatest things in the world, but if that's your only option, that's your only option. As soon as you hook the air up, you've got flow coming out of here. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but most of these machines will have a flow gauge, as you can see right here. So this flow gauge, if you guys, kind of hard to see with the fisheye lens, but this flow gauge, this ball right here, is showing you how much flow there is. So if I block this off with my finger, you can see that the ball drops. Up, blocking it off, the ball drops down. So you're gonna use that flow gauge when you're testing this to know, hey, we got a leak or we don't got a leak in our system. Because these things are very, very sensitive. So right now we've just got air. To get this to smoke, we're gonna hit our button here. You're gonna see that this thing's gonna start pluming some good, thick white smoke. So as you can see, we're getting some smoke. So now all we gotta do is take this smoke and we gotta hook it up to our Evap system. Like so. So now that smoke is being directed back into the Evap system under the car. Now I'm gonna stop this right now because we got one more step, and that requires us putting the car up in the air. So I'll see you when it's up there. All right, so now that we have the vehicle up, as you can see, I'm at the back of the vehicle. What we need to locate under here is the vent valve. Normally the vent valve is located on the charcoal canister itself. On this particular vehicle, this is where it's located. There should be a couple skid plates that kind of cover all this stuff up, plastic skid plates, but somebody has since taken it off. And then there's also a little cover right here that I have taken off to get at the vent valve, which is located right here. Again, the vent valve normally is just 2-wire valve. It is the opposite of a purge valve. It is a normally open valve, and when it's energized, it closes it, and that's what seals the Evap system for testing. So if this thing does not work, the Evap system cannot test for leaks. If you have a bad vent valve, you have to smoke the system afterwards, because a vent valve or bad purge valve may cause one code, but then when you fix that, now that the system can actually look for leaks, if there is a leak there, which is possible, it's gonna set another code like I was talking about earlier. So again, this can be bench tested. Take it out or leave it in here. This one's easy to access. Power and ground, make sure that that thing clicks. What I'm gonna do, and this is where our scan tool comes in here. So if we take our scan tool and we go into our bi-directional controls here, so we're gonna go into engine. We're gonna go into active test. And here you can see all your active tests. We're gonna go into our Evap test. We're gonna do a single solenoid test. And here are our options. So Honda's call their canister purge valve, their CPVs, PCS, and their CVS is normal, canister vent solenoid. So there's your purge valve that you can test, and here's your vent valve that you can test. Now the purge valve, it doesn't do nothing when I activate it. It's bad. The vent valve, you should hear it click. So if I turn this on, it's kind of hard to hear, but that valve is opening and closing in there. When we perform a smoke test, we want this system completely sealed off. So I just pulled this hose off, which is the hose that goes after the vent valve, and this usually just goes to a little filter or something just to keep crap from getting into that canister when the vent valve is normally open and de-energized. When you're closing the vent valve, all you're doing is just blocking this hose off. So if you don't have the scan tool to turn the vent valve on and seal the system that way, all you have to do is just block this hose somehow. So I usually just take this off and I'll put a piece of tape or something, make sure that that is completely sealed up. This way with the scan tool is a lot better because you can see if there's some smoke making it past the vent valve, because vent valves can also leak. So the best way to do this if you don't have a scan tool is to leave this on the vehicle and activate it manually with a power and ground and make sure that no smoke is coming through it that way. But because we have the scan tool, we're gonna turn this thing on, we're gonna go back up and start the smoker again, and that's when we can begin our smoke test. All right, let's hook our air line back up to our smoke tester here, like so. Got some good flow. We're gonna start the smoke again. The reason that I start it without it being hooked up is because obviously this thing, as you can see, takes a minute to start producing some good thick smoke, and that's the stuff that we want to put into the system because it gives us a better chance of detecting a leak. So we're gonna let this thing smoke up a little bit. All right, we're gonna grab our evap line that we were talking about earlier. We're gonna stick her in there like so. And now we gotta come to our scan tool, or what we discussed earlier. I'm gonna turn that canister vent solenoid on. So now that we have our canister vent valve on, we have potentially sealed the system. And this is where we're gonna perform our smoke test. So this is gonna fill that entire evap system with smoke. You're gonna, hopefully, the result that you wanna see after this, after a couple minutes of it filling that system up, is this flow valve, or this ball right here, to drop all the way down to 0. That is the ideal result. All right, we're back under the car. Now, when you're smoking the system, make sure that there is no smoke coming out of here. This is activated. There should be nothing coming through this vent valve. If there is smoke coming through that vent valve, you know that that vent valve is bad. Now, I have made a discovery on this vehicle. I don't know if you guys can see it on the camera, but there is a plume of smoke coming from this area. Does anybody have any guesses as to what is leaking in this evap system right now? If you said gas cap, you would be correct. One of the most common leaks is this gas cap here, just because of how many times it's on and off. Now, as you can see, this thing looks to be a new gas cap. So I don't know if you had the vehicle somewhere else and they tried to correct this problem already by putting a gas cap on it, but this is an aftermarket piece of garbage gas cap, and that's why it was leaking. So what I've done, because now that we've got the gas cap leaking, we don't know if there's leaks anywhere else in the system, is I've capped off this gas cap with just a cap right here. You really use anything, you probably fit a glove on there, cap it off with a glove. Either way, I want to eliminate this leak from the system to make sure that there's no other leaks in the system. And let me tell you, I've already gone and looked over at the gauge on my machine, my smoke machine. I think we're there. As you can see, or can't see, because this was in the way, our ball, our flow valve here, is at dead 0. That means that this system is completely sealed up. So that's it for this one. Needed a purge valve. We smoke tested the system to make sure that there wasn't any other problems. We found that the gas cap is also leaking. We're gonna opt to get him an OEM gas cap for this thing. Put in this purge valve, and he's gonna be rolling back down the road. And Tyler can sleep at night because he knows that that check engine light isn't gonna come back on for an evap problem. Now, I know not all evap systems are exactly the same. This is the most common setup. There are other manufacturers that use different types of setups. I know the Chrysler stuff, they use an eSIM switch, which is, again, basically the exact same thing as this. It has a purge valve up front, except in the tank, instead of making another valve or a solenoid in there, that valve actually works off of vacuum being pulled into the tank. As soon as it sees a pressure differential, that eSIM switch closes. Basically works like a vent valve without actually having to make an electronic portion of it, other than for the computer to know whether it's open or closed. That system basically uses that open-close switch in that valve and how long it takes to go open again after it's been closed, after the system's purging. That's how it detects a leak in the system on that version. This version, what it does on a hot day in the summertime or something like that, it's gonna run its test. It's gonna close that valve. Both valves are now closed. Pressure is going to build because it's so hot out into the tank, and it's going to monitor it using a pressure sensor in the tank. There's also this style system which uses a leak detection pump. So it's the exact same thing, vent valve in the back, purge valve in the front. A lot of the Euros do this, but this one has its own way of creating pressure in the tank, and that's through a little leak detection pump motor. Basically pumps up the tank to a certain pressure, closes both valves, waits a bit, sees how long it takes for the pressure to drop, and sets a code accordingly. Now there's a couple other trick evap systems on manufacturers, but for the most part, these are the systems that you're gonna run into. This one is the most common one. That's why we're demonstrating on this one today. But yeah, that's all that you need to know about smoke testing an evap system. Hope you guys learned something from this video. I know it was a lot of talking, a lot of stuff to take in. We can go a little bit more in depth in future videos if I have a car in that I hadn't already diagnosed. Unfortunately, I already diagnosed this one as a bad purge valve and didn't film that process. But in the future, we can dive deeper into things like this. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, leave them down below. Again, thank you so much for watching. Remember guys, keep on hustling, and most importantly, be kind. Peace.